Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. Today, let's take a look at Official Xbox Magazine. I want to pick up a physical copy and talk about it because magazines used to be such a key piece of gaming in the 6th gen. I've always wanted to do this as a series, and I really wanted to start at issue number 1, but it's been a pain to get a hold of it, and not for insane prices. So I thought I'd start with Holiday 2003. That's the middle of the Xbox's run. A good past behind it and a bright future. And let me know how you feel about this going through these magazines in this way. It's a work in progress and I want it to be better, and the only way to do that is through your help, so be sure to let me know in the comments. And quickly, I want to thank my YouTube channel members for their support. First off, this is all physical. I thought physically turning the page would be fun and tactile over just looking at digital files. Also, this will be off the cuff, unscripted. But I do have some notes that I've taken to make sure I go over key points through these pages. And I'll only be talking and surmising, not reading from page to page, but feel free if you want to read it to pause at any time, read through it, and then we'll move through the magazine together. But let's go ahead and get into this one. Just looking at the front, I have this really interesting slip around at the front for Rainbow Six 3, which you'll see at the end of this, connects to the back of the magazine, and it just says, "We want this now. Rainbow Six 3. And if we flip it open, I really love that the back of this gives you a bunch of reviews and says it's in store now. It's really well designed. Now, I love the cover here. It's a really good one because it really sells that Vice City feeling, even though there's a little bit of GTA 3 here, but you got that nice pink on there, and you have the characters from the game case, and it really sells that Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City are right here. They are finally on Xbox, which was a huge deal. I remember that. I remember going into the rental store and seeing tons of copies of GTA 3 and Vice City, because in rental stores, they separated the both of them. You couldn't get them together. And I remember picking up Vice City and just loving it. And you know, I didn't have a PS2. I only ever got to play Grand Theft Auto at friends' houses. So this was a great way to play it at home. We also get a preview for Dead or Alive Online, which was the upcoming Dead or Alive, and Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow, which was another huge deal. So right when we flip this open, we get a Mission Impossible ad, which has a really nice size to it. I love the colors here, the greens and the blues. It's selling that Metal Gear Solid vibe, but of course you have the hit Mission Impossible movies. I reviewed this one. I enjoyed this one. I like that it has some nice blurbs on it. It's a really clean and sleek ad. Moving on, we have another great ad for Spawn Armageddon. It's got that nice edgy feel with giant guns and flames. I really love this ad as well. And then we have the contents, which has another nice piece of art from Grand Theft Auto. And in this one, we have a holiday gift guide. Since this is the holiday edition, we have Grand Theft Auto cheat codes, Dead or Alive Online, as well as a guide to D&D heroes in the back. And then moving on, we have even more contents. We just kind of have a page breakdown. Also what came on the demo disc. Here we see a big one that always makes me really sad is the True Fantasy Online little blurb, a game that we would never get. And we'll talk about that a little more when we get there. But we also have Pandora Tomorrow and all the great reviews in the back, as well as this Project Gotham Racing 2, which this is part of the ad format that was huge, and you'll see this multiple times throughout this magazine for Xbox Live. It had a green border with the black ad in the middle, and really trying to sell Xbox Live. That's the killer app of the Xbox, is just playing these games online. And Project Gotham Racing 2 is a great one to really sell that. All right, next up is another ad, but for Backyard Wrestling Don't Try This at Home, which I owned this game back in the day. I wasn't even a wrestling kid, and I had someone at school tell me how awesome this game was, so I actually picked it up. I remember it was super cheap, and I love this ad. It kind of sells like that era's like angst, and it really hit me. Jackass meets the squared circle in America's backyard. You know, silly stuff like that. I remember having fun with this one, but I have not played it in a long time. I wonder how I'd feel about it. And look at the artists we have here. You know, Andrew WK, Sum 41, Rancid, CKY. This is actually kind of crazy. Bowling for Soup. There's some good stuff here. I might actually have to check this one out again. All right, so moving on, and I'm gonna have to censor this ad on the right. I think it's for some Mark Echo show called Naked. I've never heard of this. But I remember ads like this in these magazines. I think it was Game Informer would have like these ads for cell phone wallpapers, and it would have like not naked women, but pretty much naked women that you could download onto your phone. And yeah, so this is not that, but you know, it's a show called Naked, and we have Asia Argento here, who is showing off a lot. Not naked. I'm sure any teenage boy reading this was going crazy. But here on the left, we have a big piece from editor-in-chief Mike Salmon, who talks about Xbox Live and how it'll be changing gaming and how great Project Gotham Racing's live functionality was. He even says that Halo 2 is going to do that plus more, which, I mean, that is a pretty true prediction. And then everyone below gives out like their holiday wishes, and there's not a lot of special things going on here. Francesca and Ryan here, they asked for True Fantasy Online, which I'm sorry to disappoint them 20 years later. And then Julianne Brown just seems to be having a bad time asking for a less controlling mother and her stolen CDs back. I hope her life got a little bit better. Moving on, we have a giant Rainbow Six ad, and I feel like this was a common ad. This is also very visceral with a hostage woman up here, but a lot of military games, stuff like that, they would have actual people in photographed situations in them, and it would always be like very violent or very tense, and you can get that here. If you're into that kind of thing, which Rainbow Six 3 is a really fun game, I feel like this really hits the core audience well. And I also think it's funny every time I think of it that the main character of this game is named Ding. And then next up, we have a giant spread for Dead or Alive Online, which we would find out later would be called Dead or Alive Ultimate. In the image caption here, it talks about new characters, new stages, and we have some really great photos. This really sells how great it looks. It talks about how amazing Dead or Alive 3 looked, and yes, it does, and it's going to go through and add online modes and look even better than that. And this touts it as the first 3D fighter for the console. And I'm guessing that it just didn't have a title yet. They didn't release that it was Dead or Alive Ultimate, meaning it was 1 and 2 put together. They do say it's going to be characters from Dead or Alive 2 and that they are going to include the first game, but I'm not sure if they knew that this was going to be an actual just remake, but still exciting stuff here. Next up is Metal Arms. I love this ad where it says, "Who's your daddy?" It's got a gun pointed right at me, and he's delivering a warm welcome to evil bots everywhere. Yeah, it's just a really solid ad. This is how you sell a game, right? Especially one where it's a new IP, have it be really in your face and really go into the weapons, sell that Ratchet and Clank side of it. So this is a really fun ad. And then next up, we have an interview with the Painkiller team, which is kind of a very fluffy piece talking about all of the levels, how they never reuse textures, and how amazing the physics are, as well as it being rebuilt for the Xbox. And at the top, it says that it would be a post-Halo 2 game in the summer, coming out after Halo 2, which would be kind of wrong. It would come out after Halo 2, but not in the time they expected. Halo 2 would get delayed until way later, and then Painkiller wouldn't come to the Xbox till 2006, but it did get a 2004 PC release. And the other side of this has an interview with the lead designer of Full Spectrum Warrior, which I reviewed on the channel, and this is kind of an ongoing series. And here it talks about the inception of the series. It goes into its origins from just reading a book and all the teams that work together with it, like Sony and the Army, to build this game. The poll on the side is asking what people want next from the Xbox. Graphics and memory seem to win out of this bunch. And then the bigger hard drive, I guess people don't care as much about. But when I think about that, that makes sense because I feel like the Xbox hard drive almost felt limitless at the time. And then when we got to the 360, it did not feel like that. And then flipping through, we have a beautiful Prince of Persia ad. I really love how they captured a sense of motion here, but also displays how time really affects this game every step of the move. It's really great, and it moves the genre to the next level as it has here in the little blurb. Really nice ad. Next up, we have a rumor mill page. And there's an Armed and Dangerous rumor that a new sequel is in the works, which I don't doubt was planned, but it never would happen. There's also rumors here that Half-Life 2's Xbox release would have no delays, Project Gotham Racing 2 getting DLC, which was true, and then they predict that a new Matrix game is in the works, which I'm guessing is for Path of Neo, which they did predict correctly, being the team Shiny. And then on the right side, we kind of have like what some positive and negatives going on in the gaming industry right now. For whatever reason, I guess GameCube gets a middle ground because I guess they're happy that it's selling well. They had to include free games and drop the price to get it there. Also, Half-Life's code was stolen, and then the N-Gage was not doing well, which it says here that perhaps a hardware revision is in the works. Well, the N-Gage just failed completely. Not really a good memory. Some positives, though, is that Project Gotham Racing 2 and GTA came out, which are both awesome games. And then OXM always has these little blurbs at the bottom, a little extra to read. And at the bottom, it's like, where's Star Wars Galaxies? So if you remember, Star Wars Galaxies was a Star Wars MMO that was out for a little bit, and it unfortunately shut down. But there was an Xbox port that was supposed to come out, and I think that sounds awesome. I've never got to play Star Wars Galaxies, but it's like a dream game to play for me. And if I ever had the chance to get a hold of it on the Xbox, that would be amazing. But unfortunately, that never worked out, much like another MMO we're going to talk about later. On the right, we have an ad for Whiplash, which I think is a fun platformer. It's pretty much just the cover. This is a generic little platformer ad, but I like that it really sells that it's a cartoon. Next is a giant Lord of the Rings ad, more selling the movie side of the game with a giant Elijah Woods and Sean Astin here. But, you know, it's Lord of the Rings. It was such a hyped up movie at the time. And holiday 2003, yeah, that's when I saw Return of the King. So this was a huge time for Lord of the Rings. That's really all you needed to sell this game. Next up is an ad for Armed and Dangerous, which also has a review later in the magazine. I talked about this one really recently, but it's just a really quirky LucasArts game, kind of at a time when they were just releasing these weird games over and over. And this one has like a sick sense of humor, which I always enjoy. And then we have a sticker sheet, which unfortunately I have one little sticker missing of bullet holes, which is a little interesting to sell as stickers. But you can see on the flip side, it tells you where you can place those things. And like, don't place it on a cow patty, but place it on your TV. I don't know. It's silly. It sells that sense of humor. And then on the right side, we have hardware reviews. We have a Logitech controller review, which they seem to think was okay, but they just said the S controller was better, which I can kind of agree with. I've had a few third-party controllers, and honestly, I always went back to the original Xbox controller, even with like ones with grips. And then right here, we have the Adrenaline Stick, which is a flight stick, and which they ding a lot for not having a headset port for it, which I think is a bit of a bummer, but I'm really interested in trying this. I've never seen this before, and I really have wanted to use a flight stick on a few games in my reviews, so I might have to check this one out. And then GameShark Game Saves, which was just something you put on your Xbox so you could add game saves to your games. So you really couldn't use like an Action Replay GameShark to cheat in games on the console because they didn't want to mix Xbox Live games with cheats. That's just a really bad mix, but they wanted to add game saves at least. And then we have a playback section which reviews DVDs. They have Bruce Almighty and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I remember Bruce Almighty being funny. It's been a little bit since I've watched that one, which they agree is funny. And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they complain that it's just the same DVD release, but with a cool cover. And yeah, that cover is awesome, where it's just a package of meat. That's crazy. I think they've reused that one since, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a masterpiece. And then down at the bottom, I love this little blurb, and some people love this, that a few people on the team still love the original Duke controller over the S controller. All right, so next up we have a list of upcoming games for that December, which this list is crazy. On December 2nd, it's just an insane day laid out here. Armed and Dangerous, Unreal 2, and Max Payne 2, which I remember renting around the holiday season. But the thing is Max Payne would actually come out a little bit earlier in November, and Unreal 2 did not come out that year. That was pushed out, and so was Intellivision. But, you know, Max Payne 2 early is good. Armed and Dangerous is a really solid pick as well. And then on 12/9, we got Crouching Tiger and Racing Evolution. And then Mission Impossible, which is listed here, is coming out on the 2nd, actually came out this week. I've always wanted to try the Crouching Tiger game. It actually looks like a lot of fun. It's an interesting movie to get a video game, and I always find that a little interesting. On 12/15, Ninja Gaiden and Sims Bustin' Out were supposed to come out. Gaiden got delayed, and Sims Bustin' Out did come out. And then they have a movie here for 12/17, which is Return of the King, which, yeah, I remember that being a big deal. I did not see that on the 17th, but I did see that Christmas Day after I opened my presents, and I got a tin of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I remember holding them in the theater because I love those Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and watching that 3-hour movie with Yu-Gi-Oh cards in my hand, and I had to pee so bad by the end of that movie. And every time it faded out, I remember getting up out of my seat, and then it would come back on, and I would sit back down. I was ready to go. Great movie, though. And then their choice is Deus Ex Invisible War, which I think is a fantastic game. I know it gets a lot of hate, but I really enjoy it. And then on the next page, we have a nice Secret Weapons over Normandy ad with a huge thing that says, "Hey, Captain, your airplane's on fire," and it has like German on it. Yeah, this is a perfect ad for this game. And then on the next page, we have a Tony Hawk's Underground spread, really shouting out the good reviews that I got, a 10 out of 10, a 5 out of 5, even though a perfect score from Maxim, I've learned, is nothing special. They handed that out like candy. And then it also promotes the face swapping, which was not in the Xbox version. That was a PS2 exclusive thing. And then next up, we have a few pages for the holiday gift guide. This is where they're going to tell you what games they think you should get for the holidays. And I think they have a really good selection of 6 of just like the best of the best here. You have Project Gotham Racing 2, Ninja Gaiden, which I don't know why they picked that picture, Metal Arms Glitch in the System, Lynx 2004, Grand Theft Auto, and Prince of Persia Sands of Time. All of these, excellent choices. I think all of these are solid. Even Lynx 2004 is a really great golfing game. And then down here in the action section, they have Armed and Dangerous, True Crime, Legacy of Kain, and then Terminator 3, which Terminator 3 is a cool one here. I actually never played that one. I'm really interested. And then I've reviewed Streets of LA, and I don't really like that game, but I know it has its fans. The next page is a giant ad for Unreal 2, The Awakening, which this is a great ad because, you know, it's got the cover, which is perfect, but the screenshots are nice and large. I've noticed that a lot of these ads don't show the screenshots very big, but here it shows them off and it really sells things like the vehicles and stuff. Next up is a section on the family and sports games. The sports ones, I don't know, it feels like they were just trying to throw in every sport just to make sure everything got some love. Of course, Top Spin and Amp 2 are amazing. And of course, Tony Hawk's Underground, but then you got basketball, soccer, hockey games. So I guess they were choosing what they felt like was the best for each sport. And then in the family section, it's more of a mixed bag of Dance Dance Revolution, Sims Bustin' Out, Quidditch World Cup, and Trivial Pursuit Unhinged, all fine picks. And then we have this giant game pack for bringing your Xbox around. I wish I had this. Whenever I brought my Xbox to friends' houses, I would shove it in a backpack or I'd just carry it. And then on the right, we have the Alien Quadrilogy, back when it was just 4 Alien movies, which the first 2 are amazing. I actually have a really soft spot for the third one. I know not a lot of people like that one, but I like the darker take. And then the 4th one's a little rough. Moving on, we have like RPGs, adventure games, and some platformers. We got Deus Ex Invisible War, which is great. I love Voodoo Vince. Return of the King is good. We got stuff like Whiplash, iNinja, Sphinx, all stuff I've like covered, and it's really solid. The one that stood out to me here, though, was Apocalyptica, which I had never heard of before. I had to look this one up, and just as I had imagined, the Xbox version was canceled, and I guess this game got a PC release only in Europe? Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yeah, this never saw an Xbox release of any kind. And this one was a very interesting look into the past. We have an MP3 player here that can hold 1.5 gigabytes of music for $230. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, I remember having an MP3 at this time, and it was very, very tiny. How many songs I could fit on there? I didn't have an iPod. I'm sure this was a big deal. And then on the next page, we have a return to that like green border design for Counter-Strike on Xbox Live. Just showing real people playing the game with headsets on with some Counter-Strike art. It sells exactly what it wants to. So they have more games. This is a huge holiday gift guide. But we have like stuff like Counter-Strike, Max Payne 2, 13, Unreal 2, Medal of Honor, Rising Sun, Midway Arcade Treasures, Cabela's Dangerous Hunts, which, I mean, these are all great selections. This shows you just how solid the Xbox is running at this time with exclusives and third-party titles. It really was a great time to be gaming. And then down here in the corner, we have a speaker set. On the right, we have Hunter the Reckoning Redeemer, which was the Xbox Hunter the Reckoning game versus the Wayward game that is actually down in the bottom left that is shown. And then this was a new Hunter the Reckoning game. So that's pretty exciting. I've actually never touched this one, but of course I want to play all of these games. These magazines always get me excited. wow, we even have more games for their gift guide, and there's still some solid ones to talk about, like Racing Evolution, Need for Speed Underground, Spawn, Arx Fatalis, the Magic the Gathering game, and then Broken Sword, and then Goblin Commander. There's a lot going on here. The little blurbs on all these are not that interesting, to be honest, but it is a nice look. And then we have an ad for a 30-inch TV that costs $4,499. And then on the right side, we have an homage to the original Deus Ex cover. And then if you flip that, we have a giant Deus Ex Invisible War ad with the cover for the game, the weapon wheel on the right, and some small screenshots. I do like the colors of this ad. I always thought the blue was really striking. All right, so next up is kind of an interesting section, and that is the Grand Theft Auto Double Strategy Guide. So this was right when Grand Theft Auto had just come out for the Xbox. So both that and Vice City had already been released on the PS2, and they kind of stayed there for a little bit. And what's nice is when it came to the Xbox, it already had a ton of secrets to put in this magazine, so combining it all together, there was a ton of content to go through. And right now we have the Grand Theft Auto 3 section, and here we just get some cheats and some tips on stuff like flying the Dodo plane, which I think is a little weird. If you read it, it goes into like deep detail on how to fly this thing. There's also the trick for getting multiple cars in one garage. And I really like the art design here. It's really simple with the blue. You got characters on the bottom. It's really nice. And then on the next page, we actually get all 100 hidden packages. So they've listed them all out here. Don't know how good they are because it's only like a sentence blurb. That sounds like there's still some hunting you're going to have to do when you get there. I've never gotten all the hidden packages in a Grand Theft Auto game, so I wonder if it would be fun to try to figure out if this is a good list. You also got tips on how to keep the bulletproof cars from certain missions. And then it has something for car surfing where you can just ride on top of a car and shoot people. You know, just small stuff that you really could have looked online. And I mean, I had internet at this time, but it's just cool to have a physical thing to look at. And then on the next page, we have the start of the Vice City tips, and just gives you tips on how Tommy works, like tapping instead of holding down A button to run, tells you where all the free weapons are at, has a nice cheat section, and I really love the pink here. And then you have this mail-in rebate off to the side where you can get $5 off if you purchase either Grand Theft Auto or Max Payne 2, which both had just come out. And that's at EB Games, which kind of goes with the ad here, which is for you to reserve Ninja Gaiden. And it looks like you got a Ninja Gaiden scroll, which is awesome. That's the thing, a game gets delayed, you put that pre-order in, and this one got delayed by a few months, but I guess better than a few years. But I don't know, I really loved pre-order bonuses like this. I feel like I enjoyed pre-ordering games when you actually got physical pre-order bonuses like this, and now it's just all digital. It'll be like costumes in a game. I just don't care as much anymore. So I don't know, I miss these days. On the next page, you have a bunch of tips like for getting the Apache in certain vehicles in the game. At the bottom, it says that the next GTA is rumored to take place in the San Francisco-inspired San Andreas, which is an interesting rumor because San Andreas would be way more than that. San Andreas would be way more than that. That map is absolutely insane. And then on the right is just something crazy, a Sears ad, which that's pretty much gone, if not all gone. And I never bought games at Sears. That was never really my go-to. But here it says if you buy any 2 new Xbox games, you get a free game case, which I think is funny. That's the idea of like, oh, I got my game case, let me just throw that out so I can stick the discs in here. Yeah, it takes up less space, but the cases are so nice. But that's the mentality of a lot of people. And then on to the next page, we have stuff going over small Easter eggs, like where you can find Candy Sucks posters, as well as the whole thing where you can shoot the moon and make it larger. And then the bottom actually predicts GTA Online. So they got their predictions on point, but I do think that's an easy prediction to make that Grand Theft Auto would go online one day. And the next is an ad for iNinja, which looks like a Nickelodeon cartoon or something, sells that whole child angle. I've never played this one. That one's definitely on my to-do list. I've been asked to play that one a lot. And then more Vice City stuff. They really spread this one out with the ads. But here it's more going over like glitches and maybe points of interest. Points of interest, one of my favorites is that bloody bathroom from Scarface getting referenced in Vice City where you can go in there and get the chainsaw. That one shows up here. And then just kind of messing around, eavesdropping, hearing all the conversations, all the voice lines in the game. And then on the right, we have Maximum Chase, which is an original Xbox exclusive where you shoot and drive, and it's an FMV game with real actors and actresses, which is just really interesting. I need to do a video on this one. Don't like the tagline of wait till you see one left in your pants, meaning a skid mark. I never once wanted to play a game that left a skid mark in my pants. I don't know, that just doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. And then we have a large spread for SWAT, kind of playing into that same thing that I talked about a little bit earlier, where it's a real set of actors with guns and an action setting. They kind of capture that same vibe here. And in the top right, you have a really tiny ad for shout commands at your SWAT team via headset. I think that needs to be larger. That is such a cool thing about this game, and it's only tiny in the corner. I feel like they really needed to push that because that's what makes this so different. Next is a really great preview for Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow. And this spread does a great job breaking down in detail that the story is going to be a huge part of this one. Though they're adding online, the story is going to be very important, but you can tell they're definitely hyped up for Spies vs. Mercenaries mode, which would become a staple of the series, at least on the Xbox. And then if you look in the needs work section, so in the bottom they'll say what looks good and what looks bad about a game, and one of their issues is that maybe the first person and third person thing won't work here, which was wrong. I really think that's what makes that so unique. Next, we have a big spread, another one of those green border ones, but this one for NFL Fever, and actually all of their XSN sports line, which I hate ended so early. This is in that prime of, hey, we are the Xbox, and we have a ton of exclusive, only here sports games, and NFL Fever, I think, is a really fun football series. But that XSN line would die really quickly after. We have a preview here for Sonic Heroes, kind of going through that finally Sonic is coming to the Xbox because they felt like that was going to stay on the GameCube, it was going to be segmented, but Sonic Heroes did get an Xbox release. And it says in their final thoughts that they were scared because 3D gameplay for a Sonic game hasn't always been a hit, but they think Heroes is going to be good and really return to the roots, even though they did find that switching between characters can be a little confusing and balancing is a little odd, but it does at least have that fast, cool gameplay. On the right, we have an AMP2 ad, which has the green border once again, and I like the style of this with all the pictures of the snowboarding. I feel like I would like a little more style to these, but I do think it has a nice cohesiveness with the rest of Xbox's branding that I appreciate. Next, they're talking a little bit about Breakdown, which I think is a great first-person game from Namco. And they're talking about how it's kind of gimmicky that you do everything in first person, which I guess I see where they're coming from, but I think it's neat. Maybe a gimmick, but cool. They bring up the joke of chugging soda in first person and puking in first person. And I think that's what makes it so unique. It seems like they're disappointed that there's no Xbox Live features, and I do like the blurb that Japanese games didn't tend to be first person at this time, and it was really interesting that they were pushing that, but it does still have that weirdness of the fighting system. Really good game. On the right is another ad for XSN with NBA Inside Drive. I've never really tried my hand at the Inside Drive series, but once again, pretty solid ad. Moving on, we have the Silent Scope Complete Collection. So the Xbox actually got a complete collection of Silent Scope games, and it even has a gun that I never used. I really want to, where it has an eyepiece. They talk about it here. You look through it, and it actually brings in the sniper like in the arcade game, and I think that's neat. But I do agree that a lot like games like these, if you're just playing it on controller, it's not quite as fun. But it's something different on the Xbox, which I really can appreciate. And nice, we have a Lynx 2004 ad, same thing. It just seems like they're doing these over and over again. But Lynx 2004 is a great game. Check out my review. I really like that one. The next one is going to disappoint a lot of people. It's another canceled game here with StarCraft Ghost, the Blizzard StarCraft stealth action game. This one was hyped up. It had been on the cover a few issues ago, and here they're talking about just even more details being thrown in, like different types of mines and melee attacks. And like just reading this, I'm like, wow, no wonder this got canceled. There are so many small details and so many little bits to this. It was probably overwhelming, which they even say in the needs work section, like, will this get lost in all of the options that you can do in this game? And Well, it didn't actually come out. It sounds like a really cool game, and I know there's a build out there where you can play this, but yeah, we just never got this one, which is a little sad. On the right, we have an NHL Rivals one, another sports series I've not played. I want to go through all the XSN games one day, but it's sticking with the normal format, which I can appreciate. This is the one that bums me out the most, though. That's True Fantasy Live Online, the Xbox MMO that never happened. There was so much talk of this one over the years, and looking at these screenshots, the graphics are beautiful. They have like an anime cartoony look that I really appreciate. And just reading this, it sounds so cool on console. I just love MMOs, so this speaks to me a little bit. But joining guilds, going on quests, a deep character customization system going on here, it sounds like a blast. But unfortunately, in the needs work section, they list that there's important details still left out here, and that's probably because it wasn't gonna get released. Maybe that's a sign that it wasn't looking as good as what they were showing off. But I love the idea of this. I think it's cool that we can play Phantasy Star Online nowadays, and I feel like this is a game that would have been great to bring back on Insignia and be able to play. It even talks about an Animal Crossing style room where you can put decorations up in, which is only something that World of Warcraft added very recently. I know other MMOs have, but I love WoW, and it's really funny that we got a room customization thing so late in the game, especially when TFLO here is doing it almost 20 years ago. And then on the next page is a very simple ad for Arx Fatalis with the only on Xbox logo. No screenshots or nothing, just literally a blurb. The RPG diehard fans have been waiting for, more original and refreshing than anything we've seen in years. And I guess that's all you need. All right, so we're finally on to the review section. And in the middle of this, we have a giant map for Grand Theft Auto Vice City. It's beautiful with the pinks and the purples, but I'm not ripping this thing out. I'm keeping it intact. Sorry, everybody. Our first review here is for Deus Ex Invisible War, which is a game that I enjoy. It has its issues. I think it's a fun release, and I know a lot of people do disagree with that, but OXM here gave it a 9.1. They think really highly of it. Just reading through it, they talk about how maybe there's not enough tough choices, the frame rate being a little rough, and that the game as a whole is too short, but they said this game is impressive. They were just impressed by the graphics, the physics engine, and the real-time lighting going on in this game. And then we have a nice thing telling us like that Xbox is now home to some amazing RPGs. And yeah, look at this list. Deus Ex, Knights of the Old Republic, Morrowind, Sudeki, Fable, and unfortunately True Fantasy Live Online, which we would never get. Next is the Xbox exclusive Dead Man's Hand, which does not get a very good review. They rated it a 5.0, which makes it a very middle game, but not from the review. They call it an ugly game, boring, quiet, which, I mean, I think the game's kind of fun. I don't love it, but, you know, it's supposed to be like a Western shootout game, like an arcade shooter. You shoot at targets and stuff falls. I think it has some charm there. And they ask, why can't they make a good Western game? Well, Gun would come out a little bit later, and hopefully that would change their mind, because that's a good game. And then at the bottom, they talk about the game Outlaws, which, yeah, that's a great Western game. That's on the PC. It's a Western first-person shooter. On the right, we have a really cool ad for Racing Evolution, the evolution of speed. And then I like how it has from the developers of Ridge Racer, because it has that look with the girl up there and the cars. I actually really like this ad. I actually think it looks really clean. There's something about it that's really striking. Next, we have a really big ad because it goes more than just these 2 pages. This is for Beyond Good and Evil right up front. And I feel like this is the best way for this game because it was a new IP. As we soon learn, it would have some issues upon release. It would gain a cult status, but it's probably the best way to sell it. A really giant ad. Your leaders think that you are a threat. They are right. And yeah, it shows her beating the crap out of someone, and I love that. And with the film strip on the bottom, it really sells that she's a photographer. Yeah, this is a really good ad now that I look at it spread out. This should have sold some people on the game. Next up is Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which they gave an 8.2. I'm happy to see a little more positive review on this. I think it's good in their review that they point out that it's a surface level comparison to compare this to Luigi's Mansion, because it is a totally different beast. They talk about the puzzle setup where you go into a room and there's certain restrictions they have on you, and the Smash TV like combat system where you use both sticks. They said that they didn't like that there was no multiplayer and there wasn't really replay value, but they thought the humor and the control scheme held it up. And then on the top right, it tells you all the naughty things from this game, like how Grabbed by the Ghoulies, when it's translated from British English to American English, as they put it, that has a totally different meaning. As Rare's first outing, I'm sure they were hoping for something a lot bigger, though. On the right, we have an NBA Jam ad. Really simple, just flames going into a basket. I kind of love it. And then we have a huge spread for Project Gotham Racing 2. So for their review of Project Gotham Racing 2, they give it a 9.4, which is really high. But honestly, it sounds like it should be higher. This person makes it sound like it's like the perfect game. I mean, even here it says, how can this not be considered the best racing game ever made by any human who's ever played a racing game? And yeah, I love this game. I think Project Gotham Racing 2 is a fantastic racer. And in the top black box section, they describe the gameplay loop of, it's a great single player game. You can go through and do a bunch of races, but once you're on Xbox Live, you get your name on the leaderboards and you want to just get it to number one. And it could take so much time just to go from one race to the other because you're just trying to get up further and further in the leaderboards. And that loop really makes this game addicting, but it's still really good by itself. For the Armed and Dangerous review, they give it a 9. They talk about how the plot is like someone smoked crack, which is kind of funny. Which I honestly, maybe I agree with, but they really enjoyed it. They said the action was stupid and fun, it's really funny, and they really hate the water effects. That keeps coming up, that the water effects in this game are really bad, but the rest looks extremely good. One thing I've noticed in a lot of these reviews, I think for the past few reviews, they've somehow made the comparison to Halo on multiple games, and it's all different writers, but like they describe this gameplay as almost mindless Halo-style controls, which I don't really see the comparison there. It's almost like, hey, let's see if we can reference Halo in every review. It's kind of weird. On the right, we have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ad. It's got the turtles on it. What more could you want? This is a nice way if a kid was flipping through this. Oh, hey, Turtles, perfect new Turtles game coming out. I guess I'll go grab that. And then next, I have a gun pointed at me with True Crime Streets of LA. There's the meme right there. But yeah, this is just an iconic picture. I don't know what the best way to explain it is. Just this dude with a gun pointed at you. It's some screenshots. It's all you needed. I mean, I rented this game as a kid. Maybe I felt like I was being held at gunpoint to rent it. Next, we have 2 reviews, one for Rising Sun, which they give an 8.8. They talk about how blocky and ugly the graphics are, but how amazing the sound is in this game, which I don't remember that. I need to go back and re-listen to that. I'm sure it's impressive. I think that beginning moment in Rising Sun is incredible. And then the co-op mode, which I think really helps out that game a lot. I do think that's a really good game. I want to revisit that one. Oh, and hey, another one that I reviewed, Jedi Knight 3 Jedi Academy, they give it a 7, which I would rate it a little higher. But in their review, they seem to really harp on that it's worse than the PC version, which I've never played the PC version. I do think I own it, so maybe I need to do a comparison and really see, because they say the AI compared between both of them is awful, but they did like the multiplayer. They like the siege mode, which gives 2 teams different goals to go about, and that made me really want to play it. And it is supported on Insignia, so I should give that one a try. Then you have Kill Switch, which its big thing was its cover system, which was really important at the time because games had cover, but this one really revolutionized it in a way. And it's cover or religion. On this battlefield, everyone finds something. I like that. It really got that military edge that was so big at the time. On the next page, we have a giant spread for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game, Chaos Bleeds, which isn't the Xbox exclusive one, it's the next one. Never played either of the Buffy games. I'm waiting. I've said this quite a bit. It's taken me a while to get through the show Buffy because I want to catch up, so I kind of have context for the game. I'm really awful at watching TV shows. Unfortunately, TV, with all my other interests I have, TV ends up near the bottom. So maybe one day we'll get to these. I hopefully will. But the first Buffy game is one of my most requested games. All right, for this next section, we have a bunch of smaller reviews put together. We got one for Gladiator, Sword of Vengeance, which they gave a 6.9, saying that it was just too mindless, but was still fun.
The first Midway Arcade Treasures, which they gave an 8.5, saying there was some amazing games in the mix here. I always loved the Midway Arcade games. Even when I was younger, I loved retro gaming, so these always impressed me, especially the sections that had interviews and stuff like that. And then you have Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup, which I've never played. They do say that it's cool that it plays like a real sport, and it's actually a really exciting game, which is neat. I might have to check that one out. And then Sega GT Online. I understand why this one gets such a small section, since it's just Sega GT 2002 with an added online mode, which is going to be really good for people who loved the original game. And they seem to really like it. They just think it looks a little blurry, and it is just Sega GT 2002, which they say has shown its age a little bit, even though they say that the title music is excruciating, which is extremely wrong. The music in Sega GT is amazing, so I think that's a bad take. Next, we have a whole section on college basketball games, and it looks like it goes by ranked order, which one's the best. The first one is NBA Inside Drive, which is the Xbox exclusive one. That one gets a 7.9, but they say that the controls are just a lot weaker than all the other basketball games, and it's nice that it has online, but you could do better, which then ESPN College Hoops sounds like it's a great game with Xbox Live support, with great controls, even though it has some confusing design. It gets an 8.8, but then NCAA March Madness 2004 gets an 8.9, which this dude talks about how addicting this game is, how great the controls are, and now it has a Dynasty mode and Xbox Live. So that actually is the winner here, and I'm interested when I get to this point with a sports series if that really does hold up like that. And on the right, we have an ad, which I feel like it's a little lame. I don't know. I guess I don't really know my PDA history very much. I remember my dad having PDA maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s, but I felt like this wave went away. I don't remember the Tap Wave Zodiac here at all, but reading the side, I mean, it sounds like a cool package. You can play wirelessly with a bunch of people. You can play Tony Hawk 4. You can play MP3s, listen to it with headphones. So it seems like a full package, but I don't know anything about this. If you got any info, let me know in the comments. Next, we have a big thing selling subscriptions in the middle of this giant GTA review. So Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City together get a 9.1, which I think is a pretty good score. The thing is age of games was a bigger topic then. One of the negatives is that this game was 2 and 1 years old, and honestly, if you play games each year of the Xbox, you can tell the difference. So you can tell the difference between a 2001 game and a 2002 game and so on. It's not like today, where I feel like you can play a game from like 3 years ago and it still would look amazing. Hell, even like 5 years ago, you still have a good looking game that looks about the same. But granted, these are both incredible games as they explain here, and it was nice to get on the Xbox. You had custom soundtrack support, 480p widescreen, which is awesome. And I really like in the beginning, it's like, oh, you know this game is good. You've probably played it at your friend's house, and you've played the PS2 version, which was exactly what I did. I played Vice City and Grand Theft Auto 3 on friends' PS2s, and I remember seeing this one and getting so excited to finally play it. And yeah, I mean, it was just revolutionary for the time, and I still think they're great games to go back to. We get a 9.0 review for Beyond Good and Evil, gets an editor's choice, which I think is really good. I like that they talk about this game being unique, and I still think it holds up as unique. It has a lot of different game elements to it, and I'm sure back then it was really impressive to see all of this pulled together well. They love the color palette, they love the voice acting. It seems like they love everything about this game, except for that it's just a little too short. And then at the bottom, it says Ubisoft is planning to make a franchise out of this, which they're still planning on doing that all these years later. And then right here on the right, we have a greatest hits ad for Dead to Rights, as well as the platinum hits for just $20, which that's usually how I picked up games, is in the platinum hits edition. So, but I never played Dead to Rights. I do own it, and I actually want to do a review on that one soon. Here's another bunch of small reviews. We have one for Robin Hood Defender of the Crown, which is an old franchise that did get remade. And here they say the old design just doesn't work for a modern game. I've been told to play this one. I've been told it's pretty good. Definitely people think it's better than a 5.7, so I have to play that. An 8.3 goes to Magic the Gathering, which is like the fighting game RTS mix. I like how they put it as a J.R.R. Tolkien's tennis court. I think that's kind of fun because it's definitely a weird design. I played Magic the Gathering back in the day, but This one really isn't just a Magic game, it's more than that. And I think it's impressive and different, and they really love the online here. And then we have Star Trek Shattered Universe, which is a Star Trek game. I've never played it. They gave it a 6.0, and it just sounds like a wave-based space shooter. I don't know. I'll try it one of these days. I have to, but I like Star Trek enough. Just never really played the games. And then on the right, we have Drake of the 99 Dragons. Wow. And this is from October 2003. So this had already been out. They're really selling quite a game. I love that it says Killer First Issue, like it's the first comic book. And these screenshots make the game look a bit better than it actually is. Yeah, because that was a whole deal. It's supposed to get a comic series, but we all know what happened with that one. Next, we have a review for 13, which they give an 8.8, which makes a little bit of sense. This game has a style. They even put it as this is like video game asparagus. You're either going to love it or hate it. I personally love the comic book style. They say a lot of the levels are dull, which I don't quite agree with. There's iffy AI. And then they say it'll take 12 to 15 hours to beat, and that's too short. I don't know about you, but 12 to 15 hours is kind of the perfect length for me for a single player game, especially for a shooter. We're not going for an RPG here. I think that one's the most egregious attack on this game. But otherwise, they call the music good. They say it's a fun game. And I mean, an 8.8 is really high, and probably around what I would give the score. It just seems like they actually have more negatives than anything with this one. And then on the right, it's a game I've reviewed, just like 13, Broken Sword the Sleeping Dragon. This one kind of looks like a movie poster, you know? It makes sense because that's a cinematic adventure game. It fits right with it. Next, we have two reviews, one for Sims Bustin' Out, one that I reviewed. They gave it a really high 8.9, talking about how they love the level design of going from place to place, and you can unlock goals there, but you can also go back and change your career path, going for a more consoleized story approach rather than the PC Sims version, which we would later get with the Sims 2 release. Which, I agree, I think Bustin' Out is quite a fun game, especially if you're a Sims fan. I think it's a different approach that I like. And then below this is a really interesting one. So we have Dinosaur Hunting, which a lot of people might not have heard about. And that's because this one never left Japan. And see, I can only assume, because they don't say this is only in Japan, that they have the English version and they played through it. Which, if you follow things online, the English version has been dumped online. So it seems like they had canceled the English release of this at some point. I'm not sure why, and if you know, please put it in the comments. They completely scrapped the English release though, but it seems like there pretty much was a whole game available to come out. I mean, it released in Japan. And it's kind of one of those oddities, and it's really cool to see that encapsulated here, that they actually played the English version, reviewed it, as if it was planning to get released. I don't know, I think that's what's cool about these magazines, is they really capture some things that you never would have thought to have seen, or canceled games. This is what it's all about, I think, in which they give an 8.1 and say that it delivers a really fun fantasy. On the right, we have Cabela's Dangerous Hunts, which you know is a game I don't enjoy. I don't mind hunting games, but this one's pretty rough. I'm sure if you were a hunting fan, though, this screamed out at you. I mean, it's got a cool cover with the bear coming at you. The game is not that exciting, though. And then we have a bunch of other small reviews, one for Backyard Wrestling, which we saw an ad for earlier. They give it a 5. They don't seem to like it. They think the combat's cheap, it's uninspired, which I've seen a lot of places. I have some good memories with this one. I haven't revisited it, but maybe one day we'll see if it's any good. Then we have NHL Rivals 2004, which seems to have the same issues as Inside Drive. Here they give NHL a 7.0, where at first these games are good, but now they just are not keeping up. So the Xbox exclusive ones just aren't delivering the same way the other people, Sega, EA, are with their sports titles. And here, it's good enough, and it has online. That's the way it feels like. And then Crash Nitro Kart, they give an 8.3. They seem to really enjoy it. They think it's Mario Kart for the Xbox with the same wacky features, with some great online with some deathmatch style modes. And then we have Magic the Gathering Battlegrounds, a giant ad with the character in the background. It's a little low. It's a little low quality. It's actually really like they took a small image and really just spread it out. But I feel like it's a solid ad with some nice pictures on it. Next, we have a review for Need for Speed Underground. It seems like they really enjoyed this one, gave it an 8.6, saying it has the most robust customization engine of any game they've ever played. They love the look of the car models, and they love the arcadey feeling. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of issues with this one at all, which is understandable. Great game. And then we have a thing talking about getting thin packs, where you can order like these little thin packs instead of having the cardboard cases for the demo discs, so you can have those and easily collect them on a shelf. You can even go to the OXM website and get a printout for them, which I've seen plenty of these. And then here is the final page of the reviews. This is just a review roundup giving the scores of every game that they've covered. Nothing too crazy here. And then on the right, we have a Crimson Skies ad, which you know I love Crimson Skies. I can't shut up about Crimson Skies. I love it. And then we have an ad for Spy Hunter 2, which I always forget Spy Hunter 2 exists. I think of Spy Hunter, and then I think of the one with The Rock, and this one kind of gets lost in the middle. I've never tried it, but I remember Spy Hunter 1 being like a huge hit, so it makes sense that they would make a sequel so quickly. And on the right, it's just going over the contents of the back half of the magazine, such as things that are on the disc and a guide for D&D Heroes. So you get these little maps of where things are at and how to explore maps in D&D Heroes, which I think is a fun touch if you don't want to get the manual. On the next page, you get some cheat codes, even more of those dungeons, nothing too crazy to go over. And then on the right, we have one of those Xbox code books. So this had like cheats and how to skip ahead in games. And you can look these up online, and I had internet at this time, but yeah, I remember buying books for cheat codes and like for console specific ones. Like I remember they had a giant cheat code book, but for whatever reason I bought the one specifically for Game Boy, DS, and PSP when all those cheats were already in the big cheat book. Whatever, but I mean, it was just part of being a kid, was trying to cheat ahead in games. That's a great part of history that's kind of been forgotten. Next, we have a really beautiful spread for The Hobbit, which this has that Tolkien feel, right? It's got that really classic adventure art. We got Smaug back there with his treasure. We have some really great screenshots with some nice text. I think this is a really great piece of graphic design here. I would love to have this and hang it up on the wall. And then we have disc challenges. I guess this is as good of a time as any. This is something I've really been interested in. So since the beginning of this magazine, they've done challenges. So there was a fake point system where there was a bunch of challenges and games, and you would have to do things like beat a time trial or get this many points and send it to us, and you would earn a certain amount of challenge points. Think of achievements before there was an online mode for achievements. And then here you can see there's even a leaderboard for people in the season and how many points they've earned. And I think it'd be cool to go back and try some of these challenges. Some are a bit much, like there's one for like 100% in Grand Theft Auto here. I don't know if I have quite the amount of time to do that for both of those games nowadays, but some of these, like doing time trials and races, I wonder if I could pull them off. So let me know if that sounds like an interesting idea. And I might as well say, if you've gotten this far in the video, thank you for watching. I feel like I ramble sometimes. There's a lot of stuff like that since this is unscripted, but I've really enjoyed going through this. Here we have a challenge in Crimson Skies for getting $5,000, getting 10 goals in Hits Pro, and getting 5 soul shards in Dungeons and Dragons, which they have a guide for that. They even say that. And then getting a platinum score on the Cone Challenge, Street Race, and Timed Run. And these are all challenges for the demo set, except for the Grand Theft Auto 100%ing. And then on the right, it tells us what else is in the disc, as well as an ad for War of the Ring, which I guess is a PC RTS. I actually have never played this one, which was the non-movie Lord of the Rings games, which were the non-movie Lord of the Rings games that were based on the books, which I find interesting. And then finally at the end, of course, we have a letter section. There's not that much interesting going on here. Somebody asks why No One Lives Forever has never been on the Xbox, and it looks like they actually contacted them, and there was just no plans to get those games on the Xbox, which sucks because those games are really neat. You have somebody complaining about this price of Steel Battalion, which is still a thing today, and then somebody complaining about not wanting a credit card but wanting Xbox Live, and then they give the tip of just buy a prepaid card and then put in a credit card number, but don't pay with it. You got a picture here of a bunch of dead bodies in Splinter Cell, and then a funny story of somebody winning action figures from an OXM contest and opening it from the bottom because I guess they were paranoid there was like a bomb in it. And then all the action figures fell on the ground. And on the right, we have an ad for Grab by the Ghoulies with the green border once again. even though this one doesn't have online, so they're not really selling the Xbox Live portion of it, but it is a good ad for like a kid's game, really featuring that comic style. And then we're at the very end here. We have an ad on the left for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a huge ad with fighting on it. I feel like you really just had to have been a fan of the movie, and just with that connection, seeing this, you would get that. And then the 13 ad on the right with that nice cover art. And then the very back of the magazine is Rainbow Six. So you have Rainbow Six 3, Ghost Recon Jungle Storm, and Pandora Tomorrow, because Tom Clancy games were king on the Xbox. And that wraps around back to the front. Well, that wraps it up for this one. That was long. That was way longer than I expected, but I really enjoyed piecing this through the whole time. So since we're done, I do want to ask you to comment below and tell me how I could improve this series. Was it too rambling? Was it too long? Was it too short? Let me know. I would love to improve on this, but I really enjoyed covering this magazine with you and capturing a piece of history. If you did enjoy, please leave a like. It helps me out in the algorithm. And subscribe if you haven't already to keep up with more retro Xbox content like this. And if you love retro content other than Xbox as well, you should check out Camp Extras. I cover a bunch of retro stuff over there. And I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support. You really help out the channel. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.